dive in with introductions so that our mayor knows who's in the room. I am Diana Batista. I am co-chair. I'm not co-chair. I am chair. Sorry, wrong meeting in my head. And I am with Lucille Packard Children's Hospital Stanford. And as always, get prepared to be picked on. So we're going to start with Harry.
Oh, hello. I'm Harry Price. I'm an attorney in town. I'm the president of the Los Altos Rotary Club at this time. And I've been active with the Chamber and with the Downtown Los Altos Village Association. Thank you.
Thank you. Mark.
Mark Rogie, civil engineer, active with Rotary and Lava, and looking for a new theater downtown and a few other fun things for the city.
All right, I think the mayor likes to know that. What else? We have Kim. Oh, you're muted.
Kim Mosley. Are you referring to me, Diana? Kim Mosley,
No.
president. No, is there another Kim? Oh, Kim Cranston. Go ahead, Kim.
Kim Cranston, President, Los Altos Property Owners Downtown, on the steering committee of Los Altos Community Voices, member of the Chamber and Lava.
Scott Hunter.
Good morning, Scott Hunter, Executive Director of the Los Altos Village Association. Might as well go through. I'm also a member of the Rotary, a member of the Board of Directors of the Los Altos Stage Company, and also a member of the New Theater Working Group that Mark mentioned earlier.
Michael.
Michael Murphy, Rolfer, Loyola Corners. Thank you.
Dennis.
Dennis Young. I'm also on the Theater Working Group, Chamber Board, First Vice President, Lava Board, Women SV, CHAC, Rotary. You know it all, Neysa.
Kathy.
Kathy Kameen. I am the Director of Finance at the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation, and also on the board of the Chamber and Treasurer.
Pat Richards.
Good morning. I'm Pat Richards, business liaison with Nova Works Job Center, and we have been a long time member of the Chamber.
John Cowan.
Hi, John Cowan, Senior Director of Government Relations and Community Partnerships at El Camino Health, and also on the board of the Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation.
Penny. You're muted.
Penny Lave. When I told my granddaughter recently, who's a pandemic sophomore at Scripps College, that I had been president of the Chamber of Commerce, the next day she told her class that was studying the Chamber of Commerce, among other organizations, she said they all thought it was riotously funny.
With that, we're going to go to Julie Rose.
Thank you for letting me follow Penny. She's the one who hired me at the Chamber of Commerce back in 1996. I'm now one of, I think, 3 honorary lifetime members of the Chamber, which makes me very happy. I'm a member of the New Theater Working Group and spend most of my waking hours working at the Los Altos History Museum on the new permanent exhibition redo.
I feel like I'm missing out not being on the Theater Working Group. We are going to go to Cameron.
Hi, Cameron Desmond, Knight and Company CPAs in Los Altos, longtime Chamber member, past member of many things, have been on medical leave, and I'm looking forward to getting back up to speed.
Gary.
Good morning, Gary Hedden. I'm board president at the History Museum, so I see Julie a lot. We've got a major upgrade coming along, and then I'm also still on the and active with still on the board and still active with Greentown Los Altos, past president, and looking forward to planting some trees, even some downtown.
Rashad.
Greetings, everybody. Happy October. Rashad here, Star One Credit Union. Also on the board of the Chamber as well, in the 2019 new member of the year. And we are looking forward to opening up our office. We were supposed to open up on Monday. We had some delays, but it's coming along good. So thanks, everybody.
I like how you were ready to unmute yourself there, Rashad. That was like professional. Donna.
Good morning, everybody. I know what it's like to wait for a building to open. So I'm the Recreation Community Services Director for the City of Los Altos.
Abby.
Not as fast as Rashad, but I'm more trouble than he is. Thanks. The hotel and everything else you can think of. Thank you.
Michelle.
Good morning. My name is Michelle, and I am a chamber member, a property owner over at Loyola Corners, and also a fellow Bullish Charter family, as with Neysa. Good morning.
Good morning. Laurel.
Hi, Laurel Iverson with Los Altos Mountain View Community Foundation.
Marie.
I was all ready for the unmute and then I wasn't ready when Marie Young, longtime resident. I joined Kim on the Los Altos Community Voices Steering Committee, active also with the League of Women Voters and assorted other stuff.
Council member.
Good morning, Jonathan Weinberg, member of the Los Altos City Council, and Rashad I Bank at Star One. So I'm really looking forward to you guys opening up.
Anthony.
Good morning, Anthony Carneseca with the City of Los Altos Economic Development Coordinator.
Before we go to Kim Mosley, did I miss anybody with the problem with me jumping around all over the places I tend to? Did I get everybody? Okay, Kim.
Morning. So happy to have everyone here. Thank you for your patience in getting into the meeting this morning. Kim Mosley, President of the Los Altos Chamber of Commerce.
Great. Without further ado, we are just going to jump into our wonderful mayor and Bruce Barton here with Town Crier. Thank you, Bruce. If I did miss you for whatever reason, please put yourself in the chat box. Thank you. Mayor, the Zoom is yours. We are so excited to hear from you today. Thank you for being with us.
No, thank you for having me. Good morning. I love the energy from this group. I'm actually wondering if this should just be a working theater group meeting based on the number of people we have here. And I know we'll talk about that later on, but very happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Thanks to President Mosley and thanks to the Chamber Board for all that we know you do for the community, the business community. I do want to recognize Anthony, who is here. As he mentioned, he is the city's economic development coordinator. And I know you all work with him. I know you all love and appreciate all that he does. And I know our new city manager has big plans, bigger plans for Anthony working with the business community. I will do very brief remarks because we already started a few minutes late. We have a relatively big group and I do want to get to questions. So Kim titled this session, looking back, looking forward. And I won't go through everything that the council has done over the last year and a half. I know many of you follow our council meetings closely. Some of you sometimes stay up with us past midnight. But I do want to highlight a couple of things just to demonstrate that this council definitely views itself as being supportive and a partner of the business community. Last year, and I know Bruce is listening, and I'm happy to see he announced himself. So, last year was last year, we're all in the height of COVID, and the previous council was able to approve the grant program for a business community. This council, starting early this year, continued the Parklet program as it existed under COVID, because as many of you know, prior to COVID, the council at that time had approved a formal Parklet program. And the plan was to roll that out in 2020. COVID happened and we had to pivot and make a lot of quick decisions on how we can continue to support the business community. And so the Parklet program, as that council had envisioned, was pretty much shelved. And I know Anthony, Kim, former council member Bruins or Mayor Bruins worked closely with the business community, not just downtown, but throughout our different business districts to see how we could support them. And one of the ways was to give them flexibility on how they could establish the Parklet program. And I think we have Kim Cranston to thank for those wine barrels. I sit on different regional boards, and I can't tell you the number of council members from the other cities who would comment on the wine barrels, because they heard from their residents, oh, Los Altos, they look uniform, it's beautiful, they have this wine barrel theme. And compared to what they were doing, we really looked like we knew what we were doing, and we were on top of things. So big thanks to this group and Kim for really pulling it together, and Anthony. We also partnered with ensuring that the signage related to COVID, to ensure that our restaurants and stores were safe, both for employees and visitors to the store. And I know many of you work closely with city staff and also the county to ensure you had the right signage. I'm happy to hear, and I actually checked in on this, we didn't have any cases that made the front page news like other cities did with regards to any serious violations. I think most, if not all, businesses here in Los Altos got the signs up. If they needed to make a correction, they did, and they were able to enforce and follow the different COVID-19 protocols and guidelines. I do want to touch on the theater group. I won't go through everything that this council has done. We have been busy, as many of you know, but the theater group, which will, I'm sure, come up a couple of times this morning. I was very excited that this council was able to approve supporting the formation of a resident theater working group. I look forward to hearing from them later on in the meeting. And I expect that they will come back to council in the near future to give us a status update. And the last thing I want to touch on is the grand opening that we just had this past weekend. Director Leggy mentioned it. It really is a great moment for Los Altos. The reviews and the thanks that have come in really demonstrate how much people appreciate having this new community center and what we as a community have done. And I mentioned the community center and the theater group and COVID and the Parklet program because these all directly support our business community. I expect that, with our new community center, maybe attracting more residents, they will also walk over to our downtown, to our restaurants and shops and stores. And so that's definitely, I think, one of the benefits of having a really attractive new community center that will hopefully, and I expect, will benefit the business community. And the same idea with the theater group. I was very supportive of forming, I proposed it, and I was very supportive of forming this working group. And I think a theater, would provide so many benefits to the entire community. But this was one of the things that was recommended in the downtown vision plan. And we all know how thick that document is and how many recommendations are in that plan. But if you read the plan, which I'm sure many of us have a couple of times, it really shows the benefits to the downtown business community by having a theater there. And for me, that's a win-win, a theater for our kids, a theater for our seniors, a theater for everyone to really use and enjoy. And then one of the side benefits would obviously be, more patrons and visitors coming to our theater. And then of course they need to eat and shop, and they would just go across. We don't know where the theater will be located, but right now, in the general vicinity, they'd be able to walk from wherever it is, to downtown. And so that's very exciting. As we saw with the community center, these things take years sometimes, unfortunately. And it takes many meetings. One person asked, how many meetings did we have for the community center? resident meetings, and our deputy city manager John Maginot told me at least 30. Well, Dennis Young, who should know, is like flashing, I think he's up to 40, but many meetings. And so, you know, even though I'm excited about the idea of a theater group, we all know there's a lot that would need to go into it. You know, council, if we're involved in any part of the process, you know, plans and proposals would have to be presented to us for us to review and approve. So it's one thing for us, for myself, to be supportive of having a theater, but what that looks like, you know, still would be subject to a vote and approval by council, depending on council's involvement. I do want to mention a couple of initiatives I was hoping to work with the business community. I'm still hopeful. As Kim and Scott with Lava know, I reached out to Chief Galea to see if he could arrange basic first aid training for restaurant employees. And I know this is something they're still looking into. This training is provided on a regular basis. And so, you know, whenever it's convenient for you as employers to work with Chief Galea to have this training for your employees, I think that would be wonderful and appreciated by the community. I also want to encourage the business community to help us with conserving, you know, water and energy. I remember we received an email from a resident, and I forwarded it on to President Mosley and Scott, where, you know, they suggested, you know, little things like, or restaurants and shops, you know, closing their door. But the conflict there is it's COVID. So of course we want to open our doors and windows to allow the air circulation. So do we have more fans? And I know, you know, a lot of the shop owners will tell me, you know, they leave the door open because it's inviting for patrons and residents to come in. So, you know, to the extent you have ideas on how we can work together, that's definitely something I would love to hear, because as I said before, I always look for opportunities to partner with the business community. Not national, but Veterans Day is coming up in November. I talked with the mayor of Los Altos Hills yesterday, and she is on board, Harry Price, to work with us, the Rotary and the city, to see if we could put together a joint celebration downtown in Veterans Plaza, some activity, some event to honor Veterans Day this year. So more to come on that. And then the last thing I will mention, I'm sure many of you have been following the Packard Foundation request to expand its open parking lot. That's coming to council. And so I have listened in on the planning commission meetings on that request. And so it's, you know, council still has to look at it. We have to deliberate. And so I will not, you know, I don't know whether or not it's something I will approve, but I will just raise that as we talk about parking solutions, because I remember when I first heard about the proposal from Packard Foundation, you know, what immediately came to mind was, is this a potential private-public partnership? Instead of one level, could we go 2 levels, 3 levels? And I just started thinking about, you know, all the potential public-private partnerships with having that parking solution downtown. I have not, as a council member, looked at the proposal. I have many questions before I would consider approving it. But I am always, and I'm sure other council members as well, look for opportunities where we can partner together that will benefit the community, especially if there's an issue that we can solve together. And so I will stop there. As many of you know, I'll keep talking. So I will stop and open it up for questions. I'm very excited to hear your questions. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that. If anyone has questions, feel free to raise your hand. So I can call on you. Mayor, we did get a question in or sent to us yesterday that I just wanted to ask you. What is the city's vision at Loyola Corners? Loyola Corners could benefit from more visibility and business traffic as a commercial district. What are the plans with 999 Fremont Avenue, the formerly Drive Up Coffee?
So as many of you know, and I keep saying that because I know most, if not all of you, follow closely what we do. And so the city purchased 999 Fremont a couple of years ago. And as of today, we do not have any specific plans for that parcel. I will tell you, I remember when, you know, as a council, we were discussing and deciding to purchase it. We were very intentional in saying, you know, there's unanimous support to purchase it, but we didn't want to go into a discussion of what we would do with the parcel. We thought it was important for the community for us to acquire the parcel at that time for different reasons. And as you said, it's, you know, everybody's familiar with Loyola Corners. It's right there in the center. And so right now we are maintaining it. We do receive emails from time to time from residents, you know, there's this there or that we need to clean up. But right now our current plan regarding 99 Fremont is really to maintain it. I'm sure it will come back to council at some point for us to decide, you know, what are we going to do with this parcel? But as of right now, we do not have any plans. Loyola Corners has a specific plan. As you know, with specific plans, a council can always revise, amend, change the specific plan. And so many people will look at the specific plan and say, you know, this is the plan for Loyola Corners. And I can't say sitting on the council today if that is the plan we would automatically adopt. So TBD, Diana.
Thank you. So on that same path, Mayor, pre-COVID, I'm sure this council had its priorities that then had to be paused because we're dealing with a pandemic, and we're still in the middle of a pandemic, just a reminder for everyone. But next year, I mean, hopefully we'll have an idea of if there's gonna be another variant, but assuming that things hold steady, will the council bring up their priorities or look at new priorities, or has anything changed because of COVID and made you all think something a little differently?
No, great question. So every year, as part of our retreat or annual retreat at the beginning of the year, which is typically held in January, I think one year we did it in February, the council does discuss its priorities for that year. And, you know, they're normally generally in the same group, you know, so for example, COVID unfortunately came along last year and that became our top priority. But we still moved forward with our community center. We still moved forward with funding the design for an EOC. So there were definitely things that had been on our priority list 2 years prior that we kept moving forward, because until they're complete, they remain a priority. So it's rare that you see any big changes apart from COVID response last year to our priority list. But this is a list we do revisit every year. You know, banning foodware was on our priority list a couple of years ago, and this is something that we listened to the business community. President Mosley showed up to ask us to put that on hold because of what the restaurants were experiencing during COVID and the increased demand for takeout. So our priority list is revisited every year.
Great, thank you. Questions from the group. I know this is not a shy group, so feel free to raise your hand so I can see you. Kim?
Ask for an update in the interim. Could we talk about the affordable housing project on Distal? Get an update on that from you, Mayor Fligor.
Thank you. And I was going to touch on housing, so I'm happy you asked about 330 Distal Circle. We approved moving forward with 330 Distal Circle, which is the first ever 100% affordable housing project here in Los Altos, and it's very exciting. We're partnering with the county, where the county will purchase, you know, the property and also fund the building of a housing project, and they will work with the city to expedite the process to the extent we can. And the city also agreed to waive some of the fees associated with the development costs. And that is moving along really well. The county selected EAH, which is an affordable housing developer. And, you know, they had, and I've been very impressed with how organized and responsive they have been to our community. You know, they have had at least 4 different community engagement sessions. They had an in-person session last week. And they don't just show up to these community engagement meetings, take notes, and then we don't see those notes again. They show up, they listen, they take notes, and at the next community meeting, they update us on how they were able to change or incorporate the feedback they heard from the residents. An easy example is the initial proposal had, right now we're looking at 90 units. And originally the number of parking spaces was a lot less. And based on feedback they heard from residents, they were able to reconfigure the parking garage to now accommodate 90 parking spaces. And I do want to highlight that, they don't have to do this. They're approaching this as if it's discretionary and they can work with us, and they're open to working with us because they want it to be successful for our community. They could actually say, this is what we're doing, and the law allows us to do it. Here you go, Los Altos. But they've been very good about trying to do a project that the community would be excited about. And so that's been wonderful. This housing project will serve our entire community, and hopefully the business community will be our partners here as well, because we imagine your staff, your employees, your workers could also benefit from this housing project. I think we did an informal survey a couple of years ago, the last time I was at the chamber meeting, about the commute time for restaurant employees and store employees. And we know they're commuting from all over. We know some of them are commuting for hours. And so, this housing project will not be able to house every single employee or staff member, but it should help. And so I really hope it does benefit our business community and your employees.
Thank you. Marie, you have a question?
Yes. Hi, Neysa. Good to see you. Again, regarding 330 Distal Circle, some people are suggesting that SB 35 should be used to streamline the process of approval of this project. And I'm just wondering what you think about that. And I also hear that it's the city that doesn't want to do it. So can you clarify what's going on?
So, and that's what I was referring to earlier, where they could. But EAH does not want to take that route. They really want to work with us to get a project that the community will appreciate and be excited about. So you're correct. They could say SB 35, move it through the process quickly. This is what it's going to look like. You have to approve this proposal. But that's not the approach they have taken. And I, for one, appreciate the approach they've taken. They're still on schedule. This has not delayed their timeline at all. And so, yes, they could, but I'm glad they've taken this different approach. And speaking of housing, I do want to touch on the housing element process that we as a city will be going through. Under state law, we're mandated to update our housing element, which is basically looking at our zoning and the different parcels here in Los Altos to identify where we could build the different housing units in order to meet our regional housing allocation numbers. And this year, this cycle, Los Altos's allocation is 2,000, roughly 2,000 units, and there are different levels. And so we have hired a consultant that is working closely with staff and how we will roll out our housing element engagement process and identify these different parcels where the city rarely, we do not build our own projects, but where if a developer wanted to build a housing project or units, where those places in Los Altos, we could do that. And as you know, with this process, zone or current zoning is not a reason to say we can't build housing there. The law actually requires that if you need to change your zoning in order to meet your RHNA allocation, you need to do that. So a city cannot say, oh, this is all R1, therefore we can't build a multifamily project here. In order to accommodate the 2,000 units as a city, we will need to look, based on our current zoning, are there enough parts of the city where we can build these 2,000 units? And if not, are there areas we need to rezone in order to identify areas where we can build the 2,000 units?
Thank you. Laurel. You're muted.
Sorry about that. Hey, thanks for taking my question. I guess my question is on Loyola Corners, and please direct me if you're not, if I should be asking someone else. I don't want to take up meeting time on this, but a few things jump out at me. Is there's a building across from the post office at Loyola Corners, and it's been under construction forever. Can that just be left to sit there? There's often trash, and I've thought, who do I call about that? Or just what's a citizen to do? And can someone just abandon a project?
No, and thanks, Laurel. And we have heard from other residents on that property as well. There's a trigger period, and I can't remember, I don't know if Anthony knows it, but they have to be doing some work on the property. I don't know if it's a 12-month period or 18-month period, but it cannot just sit there. Right. And I know the city has been monitoring that building because we have received other complaints. But again, as long as they're doing incremental and they're moving the project forward, that's what they would need to show. So it may not be moving as quickly as we would like, or, the conditions may not be ideal. But I know our staff have looked into this property before. I will say, trash, if there's things like trash being left on the street, I mean, that's definitely something I'd recommend calling our code enforcement unit.
Code enforcement, okay.
Code enforcement, definitely, please report that. But if it's the project by itself, which some residents will call in about or send an email saying, nothing's happening there, there's a time period within which they do need to move.
Gotcha. Yeah, as I said, if I can tag on another little question, and thank you for your truthful answer and directing me to code enforcement for future things like that. Also in that neck of the woods, well, there's the post office, which I want to re-landscape the front of it. If I wouldn't get shot by federal authorities, I just do it myself. But what about the former US Bank Downey Savings? Are there plans for that, or is that like a prime spot for teacher housing or something?
So I don't know. Not city land.
Yeah.
So I don't know.
Okay.
As of today, I do not know what the plan is. And again, it's privately owned.
Yeah.
So yeah.
All right. Thanks.
Thanks, Laura.
That's where I put a plug in for the planning commissions, those kind of commissions and committees at the city's house to get a really good insight of what's in the pipeline, maybe. Excuse me. Harry, you have a question. And you are muted. There you are. Nope. Harry, you're muted.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor, for being here. My question is, how can our town become the Wi-Fi capital of the world in terms of having much better Wi-Fi? Not only downtown, even in the parks, but especially downtown. It's a smartphone world, it's a credit card world. And whenever we go to have, whether it's Fine Art in the Park or the Arts and Wine Festival, merchants and vendors and patrons, have trouble with Wi-Fi. Are there federal funds available?
So I don't know if there are any funds available. I do know during COVID, the height of COVID, when a lot of kids were home for school, some cities actually use some of their funds to have Wi-Fi hotspots, for example, in the library parking lots and other areas in their cities. And obviously the great need there was to ensure that the digital divide that we see even here in Silicon Valley did not get even wider. And so I know some cities did that. I mean, the assumption is here in Los Altos, we all can figure out our own Wi-Fi connections. And so maybe there's nothing the city needs to do, but I hear you, Harry. There are things I've seen other cities do with increasing the number of Wi-Fi spots for residents. This is something I'm guessing Anthony and staff would have to explore to see if it's something that if there's a need. I hear you, Harry, but whether or not there's enough of a demand in the community to have staff spend time and possibly funds on creating these hotspots. I know many of our residents also go to the library as it slowly reopens to take advantage of the Wi-Fi there because of where they, wherever they are in the city. I've heard from them that the Wi-Fi isn't great. And so they do end up going to, for example, the library to get a better Wi-Fi connection. So as of right now, I am not aware of any plans for us to expend funds to create additional Wi-Fi hotspots on our city properties, but I'm sure Anthony's taking notes.
Thank you.
Before we get to Scott's question, I just want to, on that Wi-Fi note, I sit on the San Mateo County Citizens Advisory Committee for the Metro. But basically we proclaimed October, we joined the proclamation of making October Cybersecurity Awareness Month. So putting that up there in case anyone needs to up their cybersecurity prevention there at home. So Scott, your question.
So I didn't have a question for Neysa. I was going to just speak to Laurel's question about the old US Bank building. That was bought by Cal Water like 2 years ago, and Cal Water is going to occupy that building. So they're working on doing the improvements to it. There was a lot of things that needed to be done to it. So they eventually will occupy that property. So that's what's happening there.
Thanks, Scott.
Yep.
Thank you. Claudia.
Hi, thanks for being here, Neysa. And this is the first time that I've joined this group, and it's wonderful to hear the conversations. I'd like to circle back on the affordable housing. The whole issue about not in my backyard, the whole culture issue about doing the right thing is really important. And it's council's culture of how they can help our community do the right thing when it's a mandate that's coming down. So it's like, how would you prepare all of us, as well as the council and those moving forward, about the course of action that we take, that we can be more accommodating for this change, that we can stop all of this really destructive kinds of conversations based on something that has to take place? How do we prepare the community to actually rise to the occasion, be an example of best practice? And it's a huge issue, and it has to be prepped. And how do we go about doing that?
Thank you for that question, Claudia. And you can see why Claudia leads our LEAD program, and she was chair of the Community Center Task Force, because just the way she framed that, I think we all want to say, yes, we agree, because well said, Claudia. Let me start off by saying for the housing element, we have formed a subcommittee. It's myself and the vice mayor. And I will admit, initially, I wasn't planning to be on this subcommittee. But for the exact reasons you stated, after thinking about it, I raised my hand and said I wanted to be on this subcommittee that will be focused on the community engagement piece. Because I think it's so important as we launch this process that we're sending the right message, we're communicating the facts to our residents so they understand why we're doing this and why it's important that we do this. And I've always said, even though it's a mandate, even if there wasn't a mandate, there's so many other reasons as a city we should want to support this. And we touched on part of that earlier, which is, many of our business employees have to commute for hours. These business employees also have families. And so we should want to have different levels of income housing here in Los Altos so that they too can live here and raise their families. And so as part of the community engagement for the housing element process, the vice mayor and I are ensuring that the consultant has this type of information, because there's a lot of misinformation out there. And we want to make sure people understand what is happening and why we're doing it. It should also be part of our value system. And I talk about this as well, where again, it's a mandate. But when we think about the benefits to the community, of having affordable housing at all the different income levels. I think, we as a community should want that, to have that kind of diversity in our community. Having said that, we hear, I serve on different boards, and we hear from constituents and different, NIMBY groups, opposing this for different reasons. And, many people, buy in communities, and they're referred to, for example, Los Altos is considered a high resource community. And there are things that they love about high resource communities, the schools, the parks, the open space, less traffic congestion, less cars on the street. They raise all these things that are associated with these high resource areas. And in their minds, by having more affordable housing, being brought to their communities, this will change for them. And a lot of them, this is what they worked for all their lives to be able to. And so part of the communication to these individuals and group is that doesn't have to change. What we're actually doing is allowing other people to also enjoy those things you love about these high resource areas. And so that's what affordable housing brings to the table. And in the past, and I'm sure it's still some of the narrative today, there's a negative connotation, unfortunately, when some people think of affordable housing. And so I think as part of our subcommittee with the community engagement, we also need to highlight the benefits and why it will make us a richer community. And I will call upon, the business community, the chamber, to help us with that messaging. Really, I'm happy to give you, some of the information so you can share, have it in your restaurants or stores, because we need you as leaders in the community to help us with this consistent message that this is really a win-win for Los Altos, and we need to embrace it. And we will only be the better for this. So thanks for that question, Claudia.
Abby, if we'll go to Abby, and then we have two more. We have time left for the two questions left in the chat box. So Abby, go ahead.
Neysa, as a community, we do a great job on our residential streets. However, the most walkable, most used pavements are our downtown parking lots, which sadly are dangerous. I've seen people fall, trip, they can't push a walker across it. When will we see our downtown parking lots, if we're not going to change them in the very near future, at least resurfaced so they're not so dangerous?
Thanks, Abby. I don't have the resurfacing timeline. I know the city has one. A matter of fact, I was on another program, and a constituent had asked about Fremont Avenue. And I know Fremont Avenue is next up this month. I don't know where the parking lots are on that list. And to be honest, I don't know if they're even on that list. So that if they're not, it's good to hear this feedback. As you know, it takes staff and funding, and sometimes there is grant funding or federal funding for some of this, but we can definitely get back to Kim or you, Abby, with an update on, one, if it's on the resurfacing project plan, and if it's not, then is this something as a city we need to look at to see if it's something we can do. And there's short-term fixes and there are longer-term fixes, and I know not everybody is excited about the short-term fixes because they're short-term fixes, but if they're really dangerous areas that we need to address immediately, maybe that's something we can look into.
Thank you, Neysa.
Okay, we'll go to the chat questions. One from Rhoda. What is the status of the quarry committee? How often does it meet? There is a landslide at the quarry above Permanente Creek that is a known hazard to homes and structures downstream. Considering that the quarry caused a flood 4 miles downstream that evacuated Block School, how is the city assuring that the county gets Lehigh to repair this man-made landslide?
Thanks, Rhoda. That's the beauty or the downside with council subcommittees. They work independent of council, and that's one of the reasons why we create subcommittees, because we don't want their work to be held up by having a full Brown Act council meeting. And so I do not know how often Councilmember Liang and Councilmember Meadows have been meeting. I know for both of them, they were very motivated and care about this issue. So I would recommend reaching out to them. What I can do at our meeting on Tuesday is ask for an update from that committee and mention this to see if there's something we need to do as a city, send a letter to the county, make a phone call to county supervisor Simidian, to address this. So I would recommend contacting the subcommittee directly. And I've already made a note here that I'll ask the subcommittee for a quick update at our Tuesday meeting if you want to tune in there. I cannot contact them outside of the council meeting. And so that's why I have to do it at a public meeting.
Great, thank you. Kim Mosley, I'm going to let you respond to Rhoda's second question in the chat box while we go to the other question from Liz. Perhaps this is off topic, but I learned yesterday that the council is considering a censor policy towards themselves. Is this true? Could you comment on this?
Happy to. So a couple of council meetings ago, 3 council members, including myself, asked the city attorney and city manager to work on bringing back a proposed censure policy for us to consider adopting. Many cities have censure policies, including one of our neighbors, Los Gatos, that we look to for many things because their community is very similar to ours. And what the proposed policy that the city attorney is bringing to us next week says, if a council member violates, or laws or policies, then a council member could warn them on the record. So for example, we have updated our norms, but if someone were to violate the norms or a law or policy, then I, for example, as a council member could say to another council member, what you're doing right now violates X policy or X law, and it's a warning. Then the policy also allows for a second warning. So if, the same council member does the same thing again, then another council member could warn them again. This is the second time that you're violating the policy. If that council member then violates the same policy or law for a third time, then the council has the option. It's not automatic, it's not mandated, it's not required. They have the option to either do an informal admonition, a formal admonition, or a censure. And the reason for this policy is to hold us accountable, right? It's not to target any particular council member. All of us will be subject to the censure policy. This censure policy will be around for decades to come. It is really a way for us to hold each other accountable and to ensure that we're, maintaining the trust of the public by complying with laws and policies. And again, it gives each council member, hopefully none of us will violate the laws or policies, but we do, sometimes we may make a mistake. And so that's what, I like about the policy. We still haven't discussed it, but it gives a council member multiple opportunities before a council or another council member could invoke the policy. And it's not something to be abused. That's not something I think, council members should be throwing around, but it's definitely a tool that I think this is for the public. This is for you to realize that we're taking our laws, our policies, and our representation of you very seriously, and we're going to hold each other accountable.
Thank you so much for that. Before I let you have the final word, Mayor, Anthony, you had raised your hand, but then lowered it. I want to make sure there wasn't anything you wanted to add or say anything that had been said.
I just wanted to say, Mayor Fligor, I'm taking notes. So don't worry, the notes are being taken, and we'll return with some answers to some of the questions that people have had.
Okay.
Thanks, Anthony.
Councilmember Weinberg, anything you wanted to add to anything the mayor said? Did you want to disagree with anything the mayor said?
Oh, trouble.
No, I want to thank the mayor for her eloquence this morning.
Thank you, Councilmember Weinberg.
Okay, Mayor, as you know, the chamber is here for you as a resource. If there's anything that you think we should start getting behind of or ahead of, I think Kim is such a great liaison between chamber and city, and we are here for that. Claudia, I hope this is not your last meeting with us. So hope to see you again next month. But Mayor, you can have the final words. Anything you want to end the meeting on?
No, just please encourage your employees and staff to get tested and vaccinated. Thank you.
I will second that. And if you're eligible to get your booster, get your booster. Kim, any final announcements from the chamber?
Much, we have discussed inviting VTA to our next meeting, so stay tuned for that. We'll be getting information out for our November meeting. The chamber is working on the chamber raffle. If you remember last year, that was an incredibly successful way for us to promote our businesses and also raise money for the chamber. So we're collecting prizes for that. If you'd like to donate a prize and promote your business, please contact me, or if your business would like to be a sponsor for the chamber raffle, we would really appreciate that as well. So keep an eye out for that.
Sounds great. Anybody else for the good of the order?
But what about the theater group? I thought we were hearing from Claudia.
Do we have
not the chair, Vicky Reeder is.
Is Vicky? Oh, there's Vicky.
Vicky's on the call, I know, and Claudia both. So basically, I think the plan is that we would just transition for those that are able to stay on for this discussion with the theater working group. We would definitely welcome that.
Okay, so Government Affairs Committee is now adjourned then. Thank you all so much for joining us. You all have 3 minutes back in your day. And thank you again, and see you all next month. Happy Halloween.
Thank you.
Jay
Thanks,
on.
Mayor. Thank you.
Thank you all.
Lost Diana, but we can move forward from here. Claudia or Vicky, if you would like to take the floor, we welcome you. Thank you so much for asking for this opportunity to meet with our chamber membership to discuss possible ideas for downtown theater. We are definitely interested in hearing more and in offering feedback.
Oh, thank you very much. Claudia and I really have not planned our remarks, and so I'll start and let Claudia fill in. I don't know, Kim, how much time you're expecting us to take, and I'm assuming like 10 or 15 minutes. Is that about right? Okay. Thank you, everyone, for sitting through yet another Zoom meeting this morning. I'm Vicky Reeder. I was asked last spring by Mayor Fligor, and then the three of the council members voted to approve a theater working group to look at the possibility of placing a theater in a downtown parking plaza. So we've been meeting by Zoom. We've had 8 meetings so far, and we reviewed, in fact, several people on this Zoom, Dennis and Mark Rogie and Claudia and Julie was here. Julie Rose is also part of this group, and there are 16 of us total. Have been doing a lot of work and hearing from a lot of experts about what's already been done. And Scott, I'm sorry, Scott, I forgot to mention your name. Scott's also on our working group. And we feel that we're excited because there's a lot has happened already that we can build on. And most especially in 2014, King Lear and his architect friend, Jonathan Perlman, put forth a proposal to place a theater and a parking structure downtown on a plaza. They proposed the one by Los Altos Grill. And then 2 years later, the Downtown Vision has a very exciting plan for the town, and that includes placing that they think the first order of business to improve downtown vitality is to put a small theater, somewhat bigger than the current Bus Barn Theater, but nothing huge. So approximately 175 seats size and 12,000 square feet is what we're looking at. Not on the plaza by the Los Altos Grill, but across the street in South Parking Plaza behind the post office. That's the
piece of land we have identified. So Claudia, do you want to just talk a little bit about what the things we're considering and what we've been doing to reach out to the community?
But mostly we have a series of questions that we've been asking people to assess, not only to get some great ideas, but also to find out what obstacles might be there. When I think about all the decades that it took for conversations to take place in the community about a new community center, we're just starting this on the theater, and we know it's a long haul moving forward. But until you reach out and get people talking out loud, because it's only talking out loud you realize you can listen to yourself and listen to others. And that's exactly what we're doing. It's not as if anything has been defined. And what we're concerned about is that there's this preconception that, oh, we're heading down this path and this is what it's going to look like. It's more about, it's almost a chicken and the egg, and it'll be really interesting to listen to Mayor Fligor and the council members too about, this vision plan is wonderful. So how do you incrementally over time get there? Because we all want to enhance Los Altos, to enrich the experience. And what's really interesting, and Kim Cranston brought this up in a conversation we had, and boy, it really got me thinking. It's like, okay, we're living in the era of COVID. And so our behavior is changing. Because our behavior is changing, how we are experiential out in the community is kind of changing. So how do you build to the future? It was just so fortuitous that the community center happened to be a big indoor-outdoor architectural structure. And so there's lots of airflow, there are, lots of ways that you can keep it a safe environment. And so how will people then, go to restaurants? How are things, how are you going to experience performance theater? So you have to kind of look for the future. We want to have incremental baby steps, because if you don't take steps along the way, nothing ever happens. So to me, a big win would be whenever we go to city council is that it moves forward one more step so that we're slowly getting there. And what getting there looks like is what we're trying to find out, and how much of it do we incorporate into a vision, as well as do you just look at it as a standalone multi-purpose theater. It's a big conversation to take place. And I just think moving the dialogue forward is a huge win.
I don't know, Dennis, speak.
Yeah, I was intrigued by the one comment that the mayor made about the Packard Foundation parking, and that being providing downtown parking evening wise, et cetera. And whether that could be explored in some way to tie in with the need for the lost parking places that may take place building the theater. I hadn't heard that before.
Yes, I have. King Lear brought that to my attention, and that Packard has some proposals before the council. And yeah, I think actually there's lots of opportunity to look at reconfiguring the parking we have and improving the spacing, et cetera, et cetera. Yeah, that's farther down the road. As Claudia said, the first step is to get the city council to say, yes, you may proceed to plan for to do a feasibility study to see what it would, what we're looking at now, a number of, the architects that designed the 2014 rendering for a theater on the other parking plaza have gone back and revisited their numbers. So we have a ballpark figure of $15 million to build a new structure. And as you all know, the community center started out at one number, and then that number just kept going up a little bit, just because that's what they do as construction happens and things get delayed. I don't want to talk too much. If you have questions, I'd rather hear from you and take notes, and then I'll get back to you with answers if I can. Nobody has, oh, Abby.
We all want to support you. The idea of bringing the theater downtown is so positive. It's so exciting. And I think it would be helpful if you and Claudia could tell us, what can we do as individuals, as business owners, to help you move this project forward so that we don't spend 10 years talking about it and actually create it. I personally think there are a few elements that might be helpful. I understand you don't want to get into specifics.
Go for it.
But I, for one, the minute you said you were moving parking plazas, went, oh my gads, that's behind the post office, one of the most needed areas to get in and out of, since it's difficult to park on Main Street. So I think that there will be things that you will need to answer so that we are well equipped to talk to others. But basically, how can we help you?
Thank you. We expect that that driveway behind that into the post office will not be taken away. Basically, and we will have some pictures by the end of this month when I'm making this presentation to the council. We'll have some rendering so you can see a building on that plaza, what it would look like, and it would also have an outdoor community green as part of it. Contact the council. We'll be making a report to them on October 26th. So email them and express support. Right now, you know, it's still just a concept. So I think just don't be fearful that we're going to take away all the parking and no one will go downtown anymore or anything like that. I think that if you go back and review the downtown vision, I think you would feel more relaxed about their recommendations for parking. They actually look at that plaza and suggest that it have a theater on one end, and then farther down on the other end, the Second Street side have a parking structure, and they placed another hotel there, which could also, in my mind, I would love to see housing there. So I would suggest you review the downtown vision and then communicate your support to the council.
Also, Abby, I think what would really be helpful, we're trying to garner support for this hopefully increased vitality downtown, this enhancement. So from the business community, as well as probably economic development from the city, it's like, well, how will it impact? What would you see in foot traffic? You know, Kim is going to be reaching out to, Kim Mosley will be reaching out to restaurants to say, well, how do you feel about this? Because the more we can get people on this program to say, wow, this is going to be such a wonderful, you know, addition to the dynamics in this community. And that's pretty powerful. And so anything that we can hear from the business community is the impact this would be. You know, there are no details. We have no idea what's going on. But if you could envision a theater, how would this affect you?
One of the things I like to talk about is the First Friday program. And I think what happens in our town on First Fridays is exciting. And I would love to see that happening not only one Friday a month, but every weekend of every month. So Kim has a question.
Yeah, a couple things. First, what you just said about First Friday is that started with Los Altos Forward when I was very active in helping that get forward. And we joked about it as saying First Fridays, then Saturdays, and, you know, starting place and going forward. So I totally agree. It's a great thing for the downtown. And I just want to express appreciation to you, Vicki and Claudia, Neysa, your whole working group for advancing this, because I know others on this call were very involved in helping to move the vision plan forward. And I agree that a theater downtown is an important part of that. So again, I just appreciate it and look forward to helping in whatever way I can move this forward. Thank you.
Thank you. And to Abby's point about we don't want it to take 10 years. I mean, Claudia is a little younger than me, but I'm starting to wonder how many years I have left to devote to culture and arts in Los Altos. I've been already doing it for about 40 years. So I'm a little worried if this goes on much longer than 10, I'll be in the home. So, your help in getting it to happen is most appreciated. any questions about any, we do have, we will have specifics that we can, we will have, there is an outline of how much time that, and the concept is that the stage company and the city owned Los Altos Youth Theater program would be the main tenants in this downtown theater, that we'd leave our current facility, which really is badly, it was poorly made for being a theater back in the 50s, and that hasn't really, it hasn't improved in the 50 years since that time. So the youth theater, we think it has such potential to, it's for improvement in a state-of-the-art facility. And to Claudia's point about ventilation and air, I think we now know how vital that is. And we, the opportunity to build a new structure that has, the most up-to-date ventilation and indoor-outdoor access, all those things, and solar power, all the right things. Then I think it's exciting. And looking at the new community center just also gives me hope that we can do this. We just can't wait 40 years for our next building. Watching the clock. If you have a chance, the youth theater is performing in the bus barn. They're putting on a musical. They've been all the students that are in the youth theater program. There's like this in the show. There's like 28 of them. They're all vaccinated, and so their cast is a double cast. And they did perform at the community center opening, and their show is called Descendants. And I really encourage you to go experience our youth theater, and I think you'll be amazed at what those kids are doing and how much it means to them to have a theatrical program in their town.
Great performance at the opening celebration, Vicki. I thought that was really a wonderful addition. So
yeah, we have a new youth education director who's quite a dynamic man, and I'd love to, he works for us 1/3 of his time. He's got 2 other jobs. This is how people in the arts try to make a living. And I'd love to be able to see him and our current artistic director, Gary Landis, have a facility that they deserve, and that we can support them as full-time artists and educators.
Other comments or questions for Vicki or Claudia?
Okay, you all agree, you love it, you're all ready to build it. And yeah, anyone who wants to pledge the first $1 million, we will offer naming opportunities for the auditorium and the kitchen and whatever, the lobby. So and we'd love to have you express interest privately to me if you want to. The architects that are working on our renderings asked me if I remember the name of the downtown movie theater we used to have here, and where the mattress store is now. And I said, yes, I actually took my little kids there before it closed once, and it was called the Altos. And so I think that we want to put when you see the rendering, it will probably have a name on it. So just so you get the idea of what this building will look like with a probably not a neon sign, but I do want it to be lighted at night and, kind of glow in the dark. And do remember that the most activity at theater takes place in the evenings, although it will be available in the day to a certain degree for presentations, for films, for classes, those kinds of things. It's 10:15. You better go do something.
Well, thank you so much, Vicki. Thank you, Claudia. Really appreciate your sharing this information with the chamber. We, of course, wholeheartedly support the idea of a concept of a theater downtown, and are happy to support in whatever way possible. So as I mentioned, I'll be speaking with our business owners, and we'll draft a letter from the chamber and our board of directors as well.
That is fantastic. Thank you so much.
Okay. Thank you, Kim.
Bye, everybody.
Thanks to each of you. Have a wonderful morning. Please let me know if there's anything else that you need, and have a wonderful day.
Bye-bye.
Bye, thanks.
everyone.